Sometimes the quietest child in the loudest house becomes the strongest man in the silent world. Growing up with narcissistic parents doesn't build the average man. It builds something far more rare, the Sigma. The one who learns early that love can be a tool, silence can be a shield, and trust must be earned, not assumed. He becomes someone who doesn't follow the noise or lead the parade. Instead, he observes, he studies, he builds his strength in private. A Sigma male is not rebellious by nature, he is forged by necessity. He is the result of years spent decoding manipulation, reading emotions that were never spoken, and learning to stand firm without applause or permission. Narcissistic parents make everything about themselves, so the Sigma learns not to rely on anyone for emotional survival. He becomes a man with no appetite for drama, no time for control games, and no interest in shallow praise. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. And clarity comes with power. If you were raised by people who made you feel invisible unless you played a part, that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've trained your mind to spot the fake, the flattering, and the dangerous. That's not weakness, that's instinct. So if you're wondering why you're so independent, so hard to fool, and so unwilling to play social games, it's not a flaw, it's a blueprint. The Sigma male doesn't rise in spite of the chaos, he rises because of it, and that's what makes him unstoppable. So let's dive deeper into 12 ways Sigma males survive narcissistic parents. Number 1, the Sigma is born in fire, not in peace. Most people think Sigma males are just naturally different, like they popped out of the womb, cool, detached, and mysterious. But that's not how it works. Sigma males are not born that way, they are built. And the fire that shapes them usually comes from something no one talks about enough. A childhood shaped by narcissistic parents. Imagine being a child and never knowing which version of your parent you're going to get. One moment they're praising you just enough to keep you hooked. The next they're tearing you down like you're their biggest disappointment. You learn quickly that love can be used as a weapon. You learn to read moods, to stay quiet when things feel off, and to keep your emotions locked up tight because they could be twisted and used against you. That's not a childhood, that's survival training. And that's exactly where the Sigma begins to take shape. While other kids are learning to fit in and please their parents, the Sigma is quietly building a different kind of strength. He starts questioning everything. He starts observing instead of reacting. He learns to rely on himself, not because he wants to, but because no one else feels safe. That detachment people admire in Sigma males. It was a shield first, not a style. He's not trying to impress anyone, he's just learned the cost of giving people too much access. So when you see a Sigma male now, calm, quiet, thoughtful, hard to read, remember you're not seeing someone who was lucky enough to be born strong. You're looking at someone who was tested early and often. Someone who walked through emotional chaos, came out the other side and decided he would never be controlled by it again. That's what makes him rare. That's what makes him powerful. Not the silence, but what it took to earn it. Number 2, they don't hate their parents. They outgrow them. Sigma males don't carry grudges like most people expect. They're not out here trying to get back at their parents or prove a point. That kind of emotional tug of war, it doesn't interest them. What they do instead is far more powerful. They outgrow the entire situation. When you're raised by narcissistic parents, there's usually a constant cycle of control, guilt, and manipulation. You might get praised one day and picked apart the next. You're taught to question your worth and constantly look to them for approval. But there comes a moment, usually quiet and personal, when the Sigma male wakes up and says, "No more." Not out loud, not in anger, but deep inside where it really counts. That moment is when he mentally moves out. Even if he's still under the same roof, he stops reacting to the emotional traps. He stops explaining himself. He no longer tries to earn love that should have been unconditional from the start. And that emotional detachment, that's the turning point. It's not disrespect, it's clarity. Imagine this. A young man finally graduates, gets a job, and begins carving out his own life. His narcissistic parent calls and says, "You never call anymore, you've changed." But the truth is, he has changed. And not for revenge, but for peace. He is no longer orbiting their world. He's building his own. That's what terrifies a narcissistic parent the most. Not confrontation, not rebellion, but silence, distance, irrelevance. Sigma males reach a level where they don't need to argue or explain. They just stop showing up to the emotional circus. They walk away mentally, emotionally, and eventually physically, not because they hate their parents, but because they've outgrown the small version of themselves that needed them. And that quiet exit, that's the real victory. Number 3, they reconstruct identity from ashes. When you grow up being constantly told who you are, or worse, who you're not, it messes with your head. Narcissistic parents are masters at shaping your identity to fit their own agenda. Maybe they called you the failure, the troublemaker, the too sensitive one, or even the golden child who had to be perfect at all times. Either way, you weren't seen for who you truly were. You were assigned a role, not given space to exist as yourself. Sigma males reach a point where those roles no longer fit. But instead of just rejecting the labels, they burn everything down, quietly, completely, and begin again. They tear apart the stories they were told about themselves piece by piece, not out of bitterness, but because they know none of it was ever real. The praise, the criticism, the expectations, all tools of control. So they rebuild, not overnight, not all at once, but with sharp awareness and brutal honesty. They sit with the pain, they study the patterns, they choose who they want to become, not who they were forced to be. That's what makes Sigma males different. They don't just heal, they reconstruct. Picture someone who grew up being told they'd never amount to anything. Maybe they were constantly compared to a sibling or told their dreams were stupid. Years later, they're living a quiet, solid life, doing what they love, owning their choices, and no longer carrying those old voices in their head. That's reconstruction, that's freedom. Sigma males don't just move on, they evolve. They don't seek approval, they build integrity. They don't chase identity in trends or titles, they carve it out of truth. That new identity, it doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. And once they find it, they never give it up. Number 4, they are not bitter, they are sharp. There's a big difference between being bitter and being sharp, but most people confuse the two. Sigma males are often misunderstood because they don't smile just to make others comfortable, and they don't pretend everything's fine when it's not. Some might call them cold or detached. But the truth is they're not bitter, they're sharp. And there's a reason for that. Bitterness keeps people stuck in the past. It replays the pain over and over, hoping for justice, for apologies, for something to make it all feel fair. But Sigma males let go of that need, not because they forget, but because they've learned to turn pain into precision. They don't dwell, they dissect. They ask the hard questions. What did this experience teach me? Where did I ignore the signs? How can I protect myself better next time? That mindset doesn't come from weakness. It comes from surviving situations that would have crushed someone else. Sigma males don't use their past to fuel anger. They use it to sharpen their vision. Every betrayal teaches them how to read people better. Every rejection teaches them how to stand stronger on their own. Every manipulation trains them to recognize fake intentions from a mile away. Picture this. Someone betrays a Sigma male. Instead of lashing out or seeking revenge, he takes a step back, watches how everything unfolds, and simply walks away with more clarity than he had before. No drama, no loud exit, just growth. That's not bitterness, that's wisdom with an edge. Sigma males don't let pain make them smaller. They let it carve them into something sharper, wiser, and harder to fool. And while everyone else is still hoping for closure, the Sigma has already moved on. More focused, more aware, and more untouchable than ever. Number 5, they stop playing the role assigned to them. In narcissistic families, every child gets a role, not chosen but assigned. You might be the scapegoat who takes the blame for everything, or the golden child who's expected to be perfect. Or maybe the invisible one, quietly fading into the background to avoid conflict. These roles aren't based on truth. They're built to serve the narcissist's ego, not your growth. But Sigma males eventually see through the script. And when they do, they walk off the stage. They don't argue about the role. They don't beg for a rewrite. They just stop playing. They realize that living someone else's version of their identity is a slow form of self-erasure. So they detach, quietly, completely. And they begin the uncomfortable but powerful process of figuring out who they are without the labels. This isn't easy. The guilt can feel overwhelming. The family might push back, saying things like, "You've changed," or "You're being selfish." But the Sigma male doesn't take the bait. He knows that refusing to play a fake part is not selfish, it's necessary. Take an example. The golden child grows up thinking his only value comes from achievement. He's praised when he performs, ignored when he struggles. But one day he stops chasing trophies. He steps away from the expectations. He chooses a quieter life, maybe one that's less impressive to others, but finally feels real to him. That's what it looks like to break the role. Sigma males don't just remove the mask, they throw it away. They stop living for applause, they stop shrinking to fit. And the more they step into their true self, the more they expose how fake the family dynamic really was. That kind of truth doesn't need permission, it just needs courage. And Sigma males? They choose truth over comfort every single time. Number 6, they have an internal lie detector. Sigma males grow up in environments where words and actions rarely match. They're raised around manipulation, half-truths, guilt trips, and emotional games. Over time, they learn that listening isn't just about what's said, it's about what's not said, what's hidden behind the tone, and what the eyes are trying to cover up. That's how their internal lie detector is formed. It's not something they brag about, it's not flashy, but it's real and it runs deep. They pick up on shifts in energy, tiny inconsistencies in your story, forced laughter, the slight hesitation before an answer. They notice the cracks and they file it away silently. You won't get a confrontation, you won't be exposed or challenged, but they've clocked it. And from that moment on, something in them changes. Maybe they stop texting back as quickly, maybe they cancel plans, maybe they just go quiet. But one thing is for sure, they're watching you differently now. For a Sigma male, trust is earned through consistency. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be real. One lie, just one, is usually enough for them to begin stepping back. Take this simple example. Someone tells a Sigma, "You're the only one I told," but a few days later he hears the same story from another person. He doesn't start a fight. He doesn't call them out. He just smiles, makes a mental note, and begins to reevaluate the relationship. It's not about the lie itself, it's about what the lie means. If you're lying about small things, what would you do with bigger ones? Sigma males aren't paranoid, they're precise. They've had a front row seat to manipulation for years, and now their instincts are sharp enough to see the game before it even starts. Lie to them once and they'll never see you the same again. They may still be polite, they may still care, but their trust, it quietly leaves the room and it never comes back. Number 7, they are not easily flattered or provoked. One of the most unsettling things about Sigma males, especially to manipulators, is how calm they stay. You can compliment them, try to butter them up, or throw insults at them to spark a reaction. Nothing works. They don't bite. And that alone makes people uncomfortable, especially narcissists who rely on emotional responses to stay in control. Sigma males were raised around people who used praise and criticism as tools, not as honest feedback, but as a way to control emotions. One day they'd be told they were special, the next they were made to feel like a burden. That push and pull created a storm that most kids get lost in. But the Sigma, he didn't get lost, he got clear. He stopped depending on people's words to feel good or bad about himself. He learned to separate who he is from how others treat him. So now when someone says, "You're amazing, no one's like you," he doesn't get high off it. He hears it, appreciates it, but doesn't let it go to his head. And when someone throws shade or tries to tear him down, he doesn't get defensive. He doesn't chase validation or try to prove anything. He knows who he is. He's grounded. Imagine someone trying to provoke him in front of a crowd, poking at him with sarcasm or backhanded compliments. Most people would snap or over-explain. The Sigma just looks at them, nods, and moves on like nothing happened. And that silence, that stillness, it cuts deeper than any insult ever could. He's not arrogant. He's just centered. That kind of emotional balance isn't born overnight. It comes from years of dealing with unpredictable people and learning that self-worth has to come from within. You can't bait a Sigma male with praise. You can't shake him with insults. He already knows what he's worth, and he refuses to let anyone else decide that for him. Number 8, they refuse to be parentified or guilt-tripped. In many narcissistic households, the roles get flipped. The child becomes the emotional caretaker, the peacekeeper, the therapist, even the emotional punching bag, while the parent acts like the wounded victim. This is called parentification, and Sigma males who grow up in this kind of environment learn early that something's deeply off. They're expected to be the mature one, the fixer, the one who holds it all together. Maybe they were told, "You're the only one I can talk to," or "You're all I have." At first they take it on, they try to be strong, to carry the weight, but eventually something in them shifts. They realize that carrying someone else's chaos is not love, it's bondage. That's when they start building walls, not out of anger, but out of survival. Sigma males who have been forced to grow up too soon develop razor-sharp emotional boundaries. They stop explaining themselves. They stop feeling responsible for other people's moods, and most importantly, they stop believing that saying no makes them selfish. If a parent tries to guilt-trip them later in life, "After all I did for you," or "You never call anymore," the Sigma doesn't react with guilt. He responds with clarity. He knows what was given out of love and what was given as leverage. And here's the difference between him and others. He no longer sees saving people as his job. He focuses on protecting his own soul, his own peace, his own truth. Because the moment a child is forced to act like the adult, something sacred is taken. Sigma males don't just recognize that. They reclaim it. They don't hate their parents. They just stop allowing emotional blackmail to define the relationship. They won't be manipulated into caretaking anyone's wounds but their own. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom born from pain. Number 9. They turn childhood pain into adult clarity. Sigma males don't run from their past. They don't bury it, sugarcoat it, or pretend it didn't shape them. Instead, they face it head on. They turn their childhood pain into fuel. Not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by understanding exactly how and why it did. They don't numb their trauma, they interrogate it. They ask the hard questions most people avoid. Why did I feel so invisible growing up? Why was love used like a reward? Why did I spend years trying to fix people who broke me? They sit with the uncomfortable truth, not because they enjoy pain, but because they know clarity lives in the discomfort. They study the patterns. They analyze the emotional games. They remember the moments that cracked them open, and they build themselves back, piece by piece, this time with no lies attached. Imagine a man who grew up being constantly dismissed. He was told he was too sensitive, too quiet, too different. Years later, he doesn't deny those parts of himself, he leans into them. That sensitivity becomes emotional intelligence. That quiet becomes focus. That difference becomes power. This is how Sigma males grow, not in spite of the pain, but because of what they learn from it. They don't walk around wounded, they walk around aware. While others are still running in circles, avoiding their past, Sigma males move with brutal self-awareness. They know what shaped them, they know what broke them, and more importantly, they know what no longer controls them. That's the real difference. They didn't just survive their childhood, they decoded it. They pulled lessons out of the wreckage and built a mindset that doesn't need approval, doesn't chase noise, and doesn't fall for illusions. They don't live in pain, they rise from it, sharp, steady, and unshakably clear. Number 10. They break generational curses quietly. Sigma males don't make speeches about breaking cycles. They don't post about it. They don't gather an audience. They just do the work, quietly, deliberately, and without needing recognition. While others are busy pointing fingers or blaming the past, the Sigma is already focused on building something better. He doesn't want to become the parent he had to survive. He wants to become the man he never got to look up to. When you grow up in dysfunction, you carry the weight of things that were never yours. The silence, the manipulation, the guilt. Most people either repeat those patterns or run from them without understanding them. But the Sigma male chooses a different path. He pauses, he reflects, he rewrites the blueprint. He pays attention to the small things, like how he speaks to a child, how he handles anger, how he creates safety without control. He knows the damage that can come from careless words and cold silence. And because of that, he chooses his tone carefully, not out of fear, but out of intention. Imagine this. His father never apologized, never listened, never said, "I'm proud of you." The Sigma, he apologizes when he's wrong. He listens even when it's uncomfortable. He says, "I'm proud of you," and means it. That's rebellion. Not the loud, angry kind, the kind that transforms quietly from the inside out. He's not perfect, he's present. And that's what breaks the curse. He knows healing isn't a one-time event, it's a daily commitment, a silent promise to do better even when no one sees it. And that's the thing about Sigma males. They don't need applause for doing what's right. The peace in their home, the trust in their relationships, the stability in their children's eyes, that's the reward. He doesn't want revenge, he wants restoration. He doesn't need to be loud. His life speaks for itself, and that's his real legacy, a quiet revolution that ends with him. Number 11, they are immune to emotional blackmail. There comes a point where a Sigma male hears the phrase, "after everything I did for you," and feels nothing but calm clarity, not anger, not guilt, just a clear understanding of what's really going on. See, emotional blackmail is one of the favorite tools of narcissistic parents. They dress up guilt as love and use it like a leash, expecting you to stay emotionally indebted forever. But Sigma males are built differently. They've learned to spot the difference between love and control. Just because someone fed you or paid the bills doesn't mean they own your spirit. Sigma males understand this deeply. They recognize when care was given freely and when it came with a silent invoice. And they don't pay emotional debts they never agreed to. For example, a narcissistic parent might say, "You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me," as a way to control choices. They expect their adult child to stay small, obedient, and afraid to live life freely. But the Sigma male has already processed the truth. He can appreciate the sacrifices without surrendering his freedom. He doesn't lash out or start fights. He simply refuses to be chained by guilt. What makes Sigma males immune to emotional blackmail is not coldness, it's self-awareness. They've done the inner work. They've separated gratitude from manipulation. They don't carry guilt that doesn't belong to them. They don't confuse silence with agreement. And most importantly, they understand that real love never says, "You owe me." This is the kind of quiet power that scares manipulators. Narcissistic parents thrive when you feel like you must keep proving yourself. But Sigma males don't play that game. They don't need to win arguments. They just live in truth. And truth doesn't come with guilt strings attached. It comes with peace, and peace is something Sigma males protect at all costs. Number 12, validation starvation trains emotional independence. When you grow up with narcissistic parents, praise feels like a trap. It only comes when you perform perfectly or make them look good. And even then, it's not real praise, it's conditional, it's manipulative. It's the kind of attention that makes you question your worth the moment you stop being useful to them. That kind of environment does something to a young mind. You learn early that waiting for approval is a losing game. You might spend years trying to earn it, bending yourself in every direction to finally hear, "I'm proud of you," but it never lands the way it should. It always feels empty. Eventually, something in you clicks. You stop chasing it altogether. This is where the Sigma male starts to take shape. Emotional starvation forces him to turn inward. Instead of begging for validation, he learns to validate himself. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, lonely process, but it's real. He builds his confidence from quiet victories. He learns to respect his own judgment. He begins to understand that if he waits for the world to clap for him, he'll be waiting forever. Take a simple example. A Sigma male finishes a project, crushes a goal, or makes a difficult decision that no one sees or praises. He doesn't run to tell people, he doesn't look for applause, he just nods to himself and keeps going. That's emotional independence. That's what makes him untouchable. Narcissistic parents unknowingly train Sigma males to stop needing the very thing they withhold, and in that strange twist, they create something rare. A man who knows his worth without needing you to confirm it. A man who can stand in silence and still feel complete. That's not ego. That's self-respect built from years of being ignored, overlooked, and underestimated, and that kind of strength cannot be faked. In final words, some men are shaped by comfort, others are carved by fire. The Sigma is the one who walked through the flames and didn't come out the same. If you've survived the grip of a narcissistic parent and still have a quiet strength inside you that no one fully understands, then you are likely a Sigma male. Not because you chose to be, but because life gave you no other option. You weren't nurtured. You were challenged. You weren't guided. You were tested. And somewhere in the middle of all that emotional confusion, you learned how to think for yourself. You learned how to be still. while others demanded a reaction. You learned how to love without needing control, how to set boundaries without shouting, and how to rebuild your identity from nothing but truth and scars. You did not become emotionally detached because it was trendy. You became that way because being too open around people who fed off your feelings could cost you your peace. You developed silence as protection. You became observant because the environment trained you to notice what wasn't being said. And yet, you never lost your depth. You still feel, still care, still love, but with intention, not desperation. This is what makes you a Sigma male, not just the independence or the confidence, but the wisdom that came from surviving people who were supposed to love you yet couldn't see you. You are not broken, you are forged. And everything you are now, your clarity, your instincts, your boundaries, are proof that you didn't just survive, you evolved. So if no one ever told you this, you were never too much, you were never not enough, you were simply built for more than chaos could offer. Stay sharp, stay solid, and most of all, stay you. Thank you for watching. God bless you.